This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
So I'm going to call the meeting, the Southampton Ad Hoc Senior Center Feasibility Committee meeting. It's Thursday, October 6th. It is 12:09 p.m. and we're calling the meeting to order. First thing, so let me just run through the agenda items, and I know there's been a lot of documents bouncing around, and I try to, if I didn't want to wait to send everything at the last minute because we were waiting for some things to come in. So my apologies if I missed something or someone, or I did the best, and I think we all are caught up at this point in time. The last thing I sent out to you guys, and maybe, I believe I sent it out to the board, were building plans for the police station, correct? So, yeah. All right. So on the agenda today, we have the update of the project schedule, the East Street property, to discuss and decide whether we want to move forward with that and have you do any more in-depth research, discuss our property visits, take a quick Q&A on the program questionnaire if it's necessary, if you have any feedback from us or for us. Talk a little bit about community engagement. Have Rini give us a brief update on public safety, where they are to date. And if we get to it, we'll approve minutes. Otherwise, we'll table that to our next meeting. And then we will schedule our next meeting, okay, which is typically every 2 weeks. So we'll see how that plays. That's consistently what we've done. All right, so I know you'd mentioned the project schedule, yeah. David. So and let me just mention that Andrew LaFosse will be participating remotely. So any votes that we take will have to be done voice votes, including adjourn. In case I forget to do that, please don't hesitate to remind me. Okay, go ahead, David.
So we're working backwards from, and I'm going to say March 1st. I mean, you have March 15th, but better for us, for everybody thinking March 1st.
Or February 15th, we're fine, either one.
Yeah, or how about next week? So that there's a little bit of elbow room in there. And and Dave and I were thinking just in product deliverables, and there's this whole question of we need to have a plan, not a study, but a plan, and maybe we don't need to quite figure this out, but sort of concerns about properties. There might be a fair amount of due diligence. Can that be accomplished? So maybe just this is something to keep in mind, the end product, when there could be uncertainties about plans. But we can continue refining that question. Mm-hmm. So the thought was that there were two public engagement components to this. Starting out, and I'm going to suggest we do this as soon as we possibly can, to meet with, I'll call it the senior community. We want men, not just women. But however broadly you want to define that, does it include, there may be seniors who live with their kids, or their kids are involved, so maybe that's up to you. But if maybe before the end of the month, bring everybody together and really get input on programming. It seems like the programming information we've gotten, it's in the RFQ, the information you sent was helpful. So much of it is like common sense. It's pretty typical of senior centers. So I think we can jump into the programming, but we'd like to get input. Things sometimes come out in meetings that, the stuff between the lines. It's not just about this big by this big, but I want it to feel like this. This is what's missing. It's not just that it's too little. So we'd like to facilitate that discussion. And generally, we have different ways of soliciting information from people, showing them pictures and having them respond to them, have questions, and they get Post-it notes. And they have, Post-it notes are not very big, so you need to be very succinct. You have like 3 minutes to fill it out. And, the different ways that we can continue the discussion, but schedule that as soon as possible, because that's part of the programming. And then towards the end of the process, to have a public meeting with the whole community that's about, here's all the work we've done. here's our recommendation, as consultants, as the committee, but we want public input on this, and whether it's where exactly it is depends in some ways on the politics of the town. Do we want to have pretty much of a finished product? And it's really saying we've done due diligence, but if you have any last minute comments, do we want to do it earlier? And there are two components of that, I think. I think when we talk to the senior community, it is overwhelmingly about program, but an essential question, do you want it to be in the center of town? Because there are center of town properties, there are ones that are further away. Further away tend to be bigger properties, more room for parking, but then, well, you can't walk here, you can't walk there. So I think it's a question for the committee, but also in a meeting in a few weeks for seniors. They may say, hey, the van will take me to there, and what is it, $1.50 each way? I can afford that. Have it off in the boonies, I want lots of green space, and someone else might say, I want to be able to walk in. So that would be the first public meeting, and then the second one is, again, either before we tie things down, and conceivably the entire public in town is asked the question on location or on programming, or no, that's why there's a committee, that's why there's a consultant, let's make the recommendation. So anyway, thoughts on that?
What are you thinking for an open house or a group? Are you thinking on a weekend? Are you thinking during the week? I'm glad to open up our center. You've just walked through it. It's not much. So I think it's good to have people come to see what we have.
Yeah, but it's big enough. You're probably not going to get 400 people and not be able to fit it, but as many people as possible. So that would be the place to do it.
And that's just for the seniors first, the senior community first, and then the other one maybe would have to open it up.
The other one.
Yeah.
Would be probably Norris.
You can figure out whether you're
Yeah.
likely to get 75 people in town or 750 based on other community meetings. Certainly the first one at the, and there may be other people besides, senior community, town officials. I think we would rely on you on the invitation list. Need to allow enough time, but I think we want to do that ASAP.
So we're already in October, and the October newsletter is out. So that's our vehicle for getting the word out that there's a meeting.
Yeah.
We can do it by word of mouth as well, or phone calls or whatever, but
We also have
pick a date.
we have an email list, right?
Yeah, let's pick
For
a
a
date.
lot. I don't think that we don't mail out the letter. I don't know how many people get the letter, the newsletter.
We are doing a mass mailing for the November one.
Right,
so
but we
did
can't
it early
postpone this
November.
later.
So if you even take the seniors that come to the center regularly, and you take the friends, and you take the pickleball group, just right there, how many people are we talking about?
I would say 300.
No. Really?
We have 80 people on the, well, there's some overlap.
They're on the list, but they won't come here.
No.
The people that will come.
Are you talking about to invite?
To invite.
So I think there's a friends list of some 200 plus people,
Yeah.
and that may include some of the pickleball people. So is 300 low or high when your reaction? I don't know what your reaction was.
Very high.
So if you're asking how big is the email list and the community,
How many people of that 3 groups would come to?
Oh, well, that's a different
Senior
question.
center?
Okay.
Yeah.
But here's another question. It seems like the most important, not the most important, really important group are the 2/3 of the people who don't come to the senior center who are eligible. That's essential to reach out to them.
That's me.
Why aren't they coming?
Right.
So some are still working.
I'm still working.
Should we post something in like the community, on
Active lives.
the website, the Southampton, Facebook page,
We can all
Southampton
take one of the
website?
things.
Robert
Yeah.
Floyd's newsletter. Yeah, we have
Yeah, we
vehicles to
can-
reach out, and that's a great point, because, a lot of the pickleball people that you saw this morning don't come to anything else at the senior center. So and why is that? And we were interviewing somebody the other day, and I said, why haven't you come to the senior? What don't we have? And so those are the kind of questions I'm curious about,
It's a
too.
perception thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
Dave
part of
said
it is
he wouldn't come
perception.
to a senior center.
I'm not going to it. Sounds terrible to say that.
Is there a special town meeting?
It's true. Yeah, January.
Oh, in January, okay.
Yeah, we
That's too
can't,
late.
yeah.
And then May will be our annual.
Right, but there's no sort of, that's.
So when we refer to Norris, it's the elementary school, so that's where the town meeting is. There was a big cafeteria, auditorium, that's where we would normally have bigger events. I imagine the meeting that you're talking about towards the end would be at Norris.
And the
Right.
near one, maybe it isn't in October, maybe it's like the first week of November or something.
Yeah.
Try to stay away from the holidays, but still
Right.
have enough time.
Early
to get the
November.
word.
So there's
Yeah.
elections on the 8th, so, I mean, I know that week is good after the 8th. I don't know, you tell me, because you have to come from out of town, you facilitate it,
Well,
right?
That's okay,
So-
we'll come whenever you need us.
So you would be there in person then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
We could possibly do it on a Friday, we're closed, but we could open it on a Friday, we could do it on a Saturday or
If
Sunday.
you're trying to get,
When would people most likely come?
older residents who don't, or who aren't part of the senior center community now, then like what's the sweet spot there? Is it,
I was going to ask Libby, what time?
6 o'clock on a weeknight? Is it Saturday morning at 11? Like what, just.
Not, I wouldn't do it on a weekend
No,
because I would be
4 o'clock
gone.
on a weekday.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be
And
Fridays.
I wouldn't do a Friday either, because people do now.
So
Or before
Wednesday,
dinner.
Thursday at 4? A Wednesday or Thursday at 4?
That may be early for people that are working, but it's up to you.
No,
Whatever you
I
think.
think a lot of people, I mean, maybe working part-time
Yeah.
in the 60s and over group.
Yeah.
And I just want to be sensitive too, because November 6th is daylight savings time, so 4:30 is going to be dark. So people that may be a little bit older, that don't really drive at night, maybe we need to do it the week before.
Vote to stop.
Yeah, I know, next year.
Next time.
Yeah, it's not this year.
Not this year. Too soon for this year.
Yeah, everybody hates it.
So in public meeting, do we have to decide at this public meeting what the date is?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, we have the funnel of communication.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. So-
we're going to meet again,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so I think as outside consultants, it's hard for us to advise about
Yeah,
how to
yeah,
get the
yeah.
word out.
Yeah.
But like in North Reading, they mailed it out with utility bills that come from the town.
That's not going to be happening right now, so.
Yeah, and it may be something else, the Facebook page, stapling it up, a flyer at the local grocery store.
Well, also if you do it right after the election, if you either do it that week or you do it the following week, which would be the last.
You can hand it out to the
before
voters as they
holidays,
come
You
through
can
the
use
center.
the polls. You can hand out a flyer at the polls.
Right.
But then you're inviting the entire community for that one, or just hand it out to the senior citizens in town. I mean, that's,
Make them card them before you give them the flyer.
well, 50% of the voters are over 60, so.
I mean, even if you do open it up to the entire community, so.
Yes, I mean, we want to, yeah, I
We
mean.
will open it up
the few
eventually,
that
yeah.
come,
Right.
I don't think that many would really,
I don't think it'd be a big deal. And so you have a little block on the survey. How old are you?
Yeah.
I mean, are you a senior, yes or no?
Is this in addition to the survey you're talking about? There's like a Survey Monkey, we had talked about that.
I'm thinking,
Because I might tend to respond to that maybe more so than going to a meeting. Sounds,
We certainly have.
Right? It's our generation.
We certainly have done we've made it the same thing where we use the Survey Monkey as the sort of backbone of the physical meeting. And so you can do both, and you can either, you can follow up the in-person by sending out the Survey Monkey with the same questions, and then you take the data set that you collect in person and you make it bigger with the same, response to the same questions, then you do electronically. Yeah.
and it's way easier for us to do Survey Monkey. I mean,
I'm not saying to do it instead of it, I was just thinking you
In
might
addition,
reach a lot more people.
A different group of people.
Right.
yeah, I would think you'd have to do both.
And that's right, it tends to be younger demographic, older demographic, so community center, we'll do just Survey Monkey, we won't even do a community input meeting.
Right.
But for senior, that's the tendency.
Yeah, we're going out from COVID. That it's better to do it.
I mean, I guess I need to understand, the goal of this first meeting is to get programming information from the seniors in town, right? I mean, is that what I heard, or?
Yeah, and programming, but in a more nuanced way. Because we can move forward with programming, but it's more character, quality, build support.
Definitely build support. I think just having them come and talk about it it gets that ball rolling and the motivation, oh, wow, this could happen, and
In my lifetime.
There's also a bridge piece between programming and site selection, which is not about proximity to the center of town or access, but it's about outdoor programming, which does depend on, some of the maybe sites in, here would not have the room for outdoor programming. So that's questions about because I think that to expand the community that uses the senior center, it may be that the outdoor programming becomes a real tool for that, like pickleball or whatever, gardens.
Gardening.
Yeah, like those kinds of things. And then people go, well, I'm not sure I really want to go to the senior center. I'm not, that's not me, but I would like a community garden plot, or, I'm interested in pickleball, or there's, whatever those things are. And then that's where you meet people, and that's where, you build communities. So, because that's an important part of what we draw is either, what is we know about the parking, we know about the drop-off, but what is the outdoor programming? What are those spaces that are part of the program that is your program for your seniors?
And in terms of interior programs, so this, in our discussions and what you wrote, no, this is not a multi-generational community center, but to be more multi-generational than we have been, to expand the demographic has implications for the size. It may be 10,000 square feet if it's really just overwhelmingly seniors, but if it's going to host other programs where maybe you have seniors, and I hate using that word, but anyway, older people teaching younger people how to cook, let's just say. And we're hearing this more and more, like young people actually appreciate old people and vice versa. So that might mean, well, maybe it's a 14 or 15,000 square foot building. So I think that's something, just the size of it will tie into that. If people are yearning for intergenerational connectivity, and you feel like there's a real receptivity to, and maybe get more support in town. So that could be part of the discussion.
So getting back to the first question David asked, which is to evolve our understanding, to really kind of reach a clear understanding of what, in your conversations with the lawyers for the bequest, what constitutes a plan? Like, what are the key things that have to be on a plan? Does there have to be one site? Does there have to be, do you have to, so that what we deliver in terms of deliverables, you're confident meets the requirements of the bequest. Because, for instance, if we're entertaining 7 sites, we're evaluating 7 sites, we could present the pros and cons of all the sites. The committee could rank the sites, and you could say, here's our number 1 site, number 2 site, number 3 site. And then that would often, in a feasibility study, that's what's in the report. Not, there's 1 site and everything else is toast, because it's going to take the select board the time that it's going to take the select board to do land acquisition or sort other things. And there's a lot of things that could prevent the town from, being ready and able to commit to 1 site. So it's balancing that with the reality of the funds entitlement. So we'd like, it'd be good to kind of know, we don't know now, but what does it mean that
So that question of plan, that was initially the committee, that was exactly what we were asking. What does that consider? It was very vague. So I like the idea of ranking. I don't think 7 is, I think that's too many. I think you want to count out a few of those.
I think some of them will disappear.
And I think the plan has to include what didn't meet, is not going to meet the qualifications, whether we can't expand the senior center currently and this is why, or another site is eliminated. So I think, to me, that might have to be part of the plan too, but it really is, my understanding is a plan to make, are we going to build, are we going to buy, and what is it going to look like? I mean, from the study. I mean, other people may have.
How much is it going to cost if we do A, B, or C?
Yeah, and that's all sort of understood. Like, it's really sort of how conclusive do you need to be? What do you have to? What kind of definitive answers are required versus a feasibility study that lays out, pros and cons and all kinds of things like that.
And you
Even
get
with
the end of the,
recommendations, like, we recommend this site, but we need a checklist of due diligence efforts that aren't going to be done by March 15th.
And it's also possible that the feasibility study is published and you guys voted and the document is finalized. And then in terms of satisfying some particulars of the plan, that could be a very short memorandum voted by the committee and confirmed by the select board or something. So the plan could be on one page. Here's our plan. You know, we're referencing the feasibility study, but we're going to do A, B, C, and D. That's the plan. And the lawyer says, well, that's a good plan, and then you're good. So it doesn't have to be in the feasibility study. It's kind of...
But maybe that's, if it's a legal issue, it may be tough to...
Well, here's the thing, the lawyer that met with this gentleman actually is not the lawyer that actually is now representing the landowner of the trustee. And so we had a meeting with that particular attorney and we asked that question, do we have to have a purchase? What does final plan mean? And it says, no, we don't have to have shovels in the ground. No, we don't have to have land purchased. We just have to have, a plan going forward, which I imagine is just a site and a plan for the dynamics of the center.
Yes.
That's my sense.
But is it a single site?
I believe it.
It's, the problem is that the original will had kind of a gray area, a big gray area. So the attorney that read it was interpreting it, and I don't think there is a definite, like you definitely need to have this, it's all kind of interpretation. I mean, we could reach out to Amanda. I don't know, she's now no longer in private practice, so I don't know if
She's
she...
willing to meet with us. I actually bumped into her, and, I said, there still might be some questions now that we've hired a firm, and she's more than willing to meet with us.
Okay, so that would be a good idea to
I
try
think
to
so.
get her to...
Then you can hear it from her.
And is the goal, remind me, because I know you told us this, but is the goal to ask, are you hoping to ask Maytown meeting for authorization to purchase a piece of land, if it
it
is?
could be.
Right. So
It's not, it's definitely not off the table.
right, so that kind of, if that's, so that would be the goal, is if it turned out that acquisition is where we're tending, as we get more information from the study, we're not there yet, obviously, and to identify what's the most auspicious purchase of a piece of land, get some, preliminary readiness. I mean, you still probably need to publicly advertise, you can't just, the town can't just negotiate with one land.
Right. Yeah, it has to be posted.
You have to, right, and then people come forward with offers, and then they get evaluated and all that kind of stuff. And that needs some run-up, so, that needs a bunch of time. But if you were in a position to ask for permission to proceed to the next step, whatever that is, acquisition or negotiation, sometimes town meeting can just vote to authorize the select board to negotiate, and that's all you need. Doesn't have to,
Especially since if the study gets approved, then we do get the money. We don't have to go to the town for money to purchase land, at least, right? So,
okay.
but I mean, it still has to be negotiated through, the proper channels.
So two issues are understanding the parameters, and the second is how far can we get towards the ultimate goal.
The RFQ did outline, I think, what we wanted as an end product. We would need to take a look at it. I think it was looking at a couple different properties and looking at what would fit on those. I think throwing out the ones that obviously didn't work, the properties, I think we outlined what the end product would look like. So you rank, but you don't have to rank all 7. If there's some that aren't obvious, then you just have to write it up and discard it.
When we looked at this wide group of land, which we went from mile to mile, quarter mile to quarter mile along Route 10, there was multiple properties that were evaluated. The select board wanted specifically to understand why not the other places, like show us all the places you considered and why not. So I think that would be important. You could easily probably say no to these ones, but it's just important that we know why they're a no.
I would just suggest, go as many many of those as possible far away.
As soon as possible.
And give us reasons why you can't consider it.
I have apple, not that apple.
Well, I think that none of those are already off the table by.
Correct.
Well, that's fine.
Okay,
So
you
what
have that, that can be memorialized in our study, you can just
Yeah.
give us that.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we have the
We can
whole-
put it in the appendix.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that the rule outs, so that the select board is satisfied that that work was done.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just our opinion, but it's your opinion, right? I mean, why they're ruled out.
Well, if you've already ruled them out before you came to us.
Oh,
then
yeah,
it's your
yeah.
opinion.
Oh, we're not,
For the,
are we
for the
talking
rest
about
of it,
those?
I
Okay.
think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the committee really is banking on you ruling them out. So, it's not us just saying so, it's you.
Should we start talking about the 4 properties we looked at this morning?
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Oh, wait, maybe you brought up the issue of schedule. I mean, we could do that at the
Right.
end.
Yep.
So as soon as possible, we want to do the
Can we pick a date? Because for me,
That's
we're
okay.
talking about a month away. And I think the more we know a date, the more we can publicize it.
Yeah, it's pretty close to
Yep.
talking.
We're already
we
talking
kind of
about-
get, we went there and then we got
All right, how
detoured.
important is it that it happen before daylight savings time? If we're talking about a 4 PM meeting.
Or, I don't, it just seems like we would eliminate some
We're having a
people.
meeting for seniors in particular, with advocates in order to get input and that sort of thing. So we talked about probably a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 4 PM.
Are we talking like an hour? This would be,
I would
what,
say 2 hours.
2 hours?
90 minutes, or 90 minutes if you prefer, I mean, we can do.
Yeah. no,
I just trying to get a sense. If we start at 4 and we end at 6, I mean, I don't,
I don't think that's good at all. I think the 11th is a holiday. It's a minor holiday, but it's Veterans Day. It's a Friday. I think, do you work on Veterans Day? Maybe some people.
Yeah, a lot of
do work on
places.
I think
Veterans
most
Day.
people
I don't
do.
know if everybody
Yeah.
does. I mean, I would suggest to have it at 1 or 2 or sometime, and if you're saying stay away from the weekend, then, for me, an open house, have it on a Sunday afternoon at 1 and invite anybody who wants to come. But if you think that's not a good idea, I think 4 and 5 o'clock, they're having a meeting here tonight at 5:30, but it's not daylight savings time yet. So I think you're going to 4 o'clock, people want to go home. They don't want to come out.
Bill, and you got the flip side of it of the seniors that are.
still working
say, 60
part-time.
that are still
That are working, that's the problem. That's what I'm saying, having it on a Sunday afternoon.
I like Sunday afternoon. I think that's a great idea, because, in my household, we're winding down. Hey, you know what? Let's go do this.
But then you get football.
It's more important to get
Yeah.
seniors' opinions.
Sorry.
I know, I'm not a football.
Yeah, it's that's a big one for.
There's a DVR thing that people can record football games.
I know, but then you gotta have everybody be
You're
quiet.
right,
So
football
we're
could be
talking
a...
Sunday, November 13th, or Thursday, November?
Or both.
This is the week of, election. Is the elections on?
So the 10th, you're thinking possibly the 10th instead, but maybe earlier in the afternoon, 3, 4 o'clock, 3 to 5.
The day after election day isn't great, because people are like, it's,
No.
there's too many things.
I'm in recovery mode, yeah.
I think
Yeah,
the
you could
Sunday,
try to
if
do
it's
that
gonna be,
Thursday, or you could do that
that's probably
Sunday,
the better,
you could
right?
follow.
But we're saying not Sunday.
No, we're getting,
I don't know.
But I think if it is like 2 in the afternoon, you're saying if you're working, don't bother coming.
Well, that's just it. I mean, I wouldn't be able to make anything before 4 o'clock. And I know most of, my colleagues work till 5. So,
I mean, I know we've held things at 4 and people are like, I can't make it.
right.
So,
Because they're working.
because they're still working, yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes we do 5 to 7 and you have refreshments. And you can even say late refreshments will be.
And I don't want to say that none of our seniors drive after dark.
But it would have to be 2 separate meetings, and I thought I heard that early on, is that you'd have a meeting
For the senior community.
for the senior community, and then a meeting for those of us that still work.
No, it's not.
And
No,
later
the second
on,
meeting was the way towards the end of the project.
To talk about the
Oh,
project.
Second meeting,
sorry.
it's about-
Okay.
So do most people agree that Sunday's better? I'm hearing Sunday, I'm hearing Sunday, I'm hearing Sunday.
I mean, I think you're never, you have
Not gonna get
football on
everybody.
Sunday, but you're not gonna get everybody. I mean, it's hard to what group you're trying to get. Like, could it,
Important to have
The
the seniors
seniors-
who use a facility to get their input.
Or the ones that don't,
Okay.
to find
And
out.
when's the time, when?
I don't know.
Wednesday or Thursday, Thursday would be fine, and we're normally open till 3, so anytime after 3 on a Thursday would work.
Okay,
But, yeah.
so the 3rd or the 10th? And if you want to use the election to get the notice out to people to come on the 10th at 3, then it'll be the 10th.
That would be an avenue to publicize, for sure.
Yeah, at the beginning of the month, it's hard because the word isn't out yet. We will have a chance to put it in the newsletter, which is being mailed. So I think the 10th is the better date.
Oh,
The 10th at 3 or 4? I mean, for those people that might, maybe can get away an hour early from work, but they can't go in the middle of the
I like the idea of 3 because I think we might get some of the people that are already here and have them stay and give their input.
That's a good point.
But I know you were trying to get a different population.
Well, we want the senior population to reach as many of them as possible, so I mean, it's...
and we'll follow up with the survey.
Yeah, that's true. If we're following up with the Survey Monkey, then you're going to get the younger people.
But it addresses a different issue. If you want to ask people who don't come to the senior center, but they came to the meeting, you can't ask them on Survey Monkey. I mean, I don't think. You loosen people up. I'll get a keg of beer. Well, maybe not, but
Municipal building, sorry. Maybe in the next building.
Yeah, and I'm kidding about that, but loosen people up and you get people talking. And well, now since you asked, I want to tell you, and that could be really valuable stuff. Again, you can do Survey Monkey, but it's more quantitative.
So we're talking November 10th at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Any objections to that? I don't think it needs a vote, does it?
And then how to distribute this is, I mean, we can support you, but primarily on town center.
So can you provide us with some kind of language or, if we're going to create a flyer or a mailing of some sort to insert into the newsletter, which has to go out in next week or whatever, right, Joan?
We can send one we've done before.
Okay, yeah, that we can utilize to, that way we can create something.
It says, develop a plan for a facility.
For a facility?
Yeah, it doesn't say evaluate, so it's like evaluating everything.
And it's at the senior center, we know what it is. Okay.
Just have to talk it up at a regular state. We need your input.
And then and I'll send this in written form. I wanted to sort of talk through this. So first order of business, let's get that scheduled. And then I think by the end of the month, send you, and my inclination is to send you like small, medium, large, or a couple of different options for programs for further discussion. So do that in the next 2 weeks. To have that out 2.5 weeks that we've gone through all of this so there can be discussion. So keep going in parallel. So this is between now through the end of the month into the next month is first pass at the sites. Like what should drop off, what should stay on. Do we have any questions digging into, where the wetlands, where they are or aren't, and go back and forth with the committee and bring in other people in town if we need additional information.
Joan, do we have your typical weekly schedule, and also do we have your annual, like just your event schedule for holidays and stuff?
So you have the newsletter?
I sent them the newsletter.
Okay. All right, so,
So that's the weekly,
but I could do an annual, I mean, that would be fairly easy, but we do have a newsletter for every month.
just to kind of understand what your larger events are. I mean, again, we're more used to dealing with council on aging that aren't so space constrained, so they're already running more programs. So we can sort of say, well, the growth, whereas your growth opportunity is much bigger because you're so space constrained. So it's almost less comparing your schedule than looking at a typical schedule for one of your peers.
Right, because we can only do one activity at a time.
Right.
Many places are having multiple in multiple parts of their building.
So a starting point is more like, well, what are those other senior centers' schedules look like?
Right, I think that would be a good, because that's what we compared when we looked at the senior centers, was what they were doing. And that's what we would like to be doing, because they had the
And the key
space.
question for a senior center that's 10,000 square feet, that's in one of your neighboring communities, is what can't you do with the facilities you have that you would like to do, that that people want to do? Like that's the, is maybe 10,000 square feet is great, maybe that really fills the need. Or one of the biggest differences between that 10,000 and the 12,000, 13,000 square foot is fixed equipment. If you don't really want fixed equipment spaces that are dedicated, that are sort of only used for cooking, crafts,
Fitness
weight
equipment,
machines,
exercise equipment,
like
yeah.
those rooms aren't multi-purpose rooms. You can't use them for all the many different kinds of things that you would do. So each one of those is kind of like on top of that. They probably aren't going to be able to fit much of that type of room into 10,000 square feet. And if you go to 12,000 square feet, then you can have a couple of those rooms or 3 of those. You know what I mean? It's sort of,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and then how big your biggest room is. I mean, I think one of the big space dedications is for the dining, and how many, like on a regular basis, enough times a year, we want to be able to seat a certain number of people.
You said 100. That's in the.
Yeah, we did put it in,
Yeah, it was 100.
Yeah, we put 100.
Because right now, sometimes we have 60 people for dining, but that doesn't happen, right now it hasn't happened in a while, but once a month, we would have 50 to 60 people for dining.
And that's
But
without a
once a
kitchen.
month, not every day, which is, would be nice too.
It's not a working kitchen, so.
But let me, these really good points. So we would, by into November, we would do program, send it in written tabular form. If we move into November, middle of November, send conceptual layouts, which aren't related to a particular site, but it takes all of these numbers and lays out spaces. And in parallel with that, looking in more detail at the sites. In the first week of January, we would really do the test fits. Here are the programs on the site. Here's where parking goes. Here's how everything fits together.
David, are you going to send us that schedule?
I'm sorry?
Would you be able to send us that schedule?
Yeah. I want to talk
Thank
to
you.
you. Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll send this to you.
All right.
And I should have said it yesterday or the day before, but some of this is
okay.
talking to David
It's good
and
to talk
Tara
about,
about
yep.
this. So absolutely, and I just thought if you had any immediate feedback, I could So in January, sort of critical with site and program come together. Said it may be multiple directions, it may be single direction, depending on whether you still want to look at small and medium, or there's several in play. Beginning of February, get cost estimates on this. May move into the middle of February. Probably square footage costs. It depends on how solid they need to be. And then towards the end of February, talk about cost benefit, and then fit into that a public meeting, whatever the appropriate point is. So by March 1st, we're essentially done. So by March 15th, we're really done. And all of this will change a bit, but this is kind of this basic outline make sense?
and I think that second public meeting needs to be the beginning of February at the latest, so that it isn't. So that it's presented in some way for public input, as opposed to we're done.
Can't be done. Yeah, exactly.
With a snow date or something.
Yeah, I think a little bit of time before the 1st of March would be critical.
Yeah. And one question is what we need to do for cost estimating. So I mean, one issue is often are we going to be using existing buildings, if we're going to be new construction. The police station, I see no way it's going to work because the site's too small to fit the parking, even if there's parking all around it. A 3-story building with a narrow hallway, it would be a horrible senior center if you said all we have is $2.5 million. It's bigger. That's all we want. Let's squeeze people.
Write it up and cross it off your list. So write it up and cross it off your list.
We're good with that.
Okay.
Okay, but hang on one second. I'm going to put my hat on of being a historical commission member who, this actually, I went to the old town hall with this person who said, if you go up to the third floor of the town hall, the old town hall, it's a beautiful room. And there was a
drop floor or something
floor put in. And if you get rid of that floor, the lighting is gorgeous. And so this is what I'm hearing. I've also heard that every single reuse of a building never is more economical or makes sense. But I'm just saying that there are people that are on the historical commission who feel like it's an absolutely beautiful building. We don't want it to lose, we don't want the town to lose it. Once they move out of there and senior doesn't want it, what are we going to do with this building? So we just need to do due diligence, like you said, to say.
It's probably, I mean, I haven't seen it yet, so perhaps it could be a wonderful senior center. It may not be, it may be more expensive, because you're talking about putting a whole lot of money into the existing building and conceivably building an adjacent space or.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not, and then the historical and everything, it does tend to require a lot of investment.
So there's the plan. The way you describe it is quite nice, but I'm looking at these plans and thinking,
well, they're saying, if you could just get rid of that floor that was added, this floor-to-ceiling windows.
Ceiling,
And there's like a beautiful upstairs room, it's very historical. So it's not my opinion. My sense is this committee is ready to cross that
probably got
list.
I think that it would be a beautiful cultural center for the
But
town of
I
Southampton.
just want you to know that we need to make sure that we have the documentation that says this is not a good option because of this, because it's a town-owned property. And the town bought, there used to be an old Grange there, so the town actually bought 1 acre. Is that 1 acre?
Is that even 1 acre?
So we have egress to Route 10 directly, plus East Street. So we bought it originally because we could then put in a septic on that site or have egress to Route 10. So people are thinking about the future, and yet I think this committee feels like it's not the best option. But
well, multiple floors for senior center where people have mobility issues. You want connectivity, you want to tie people to each other, to split it up on floors, splits them apart.
I don't think we have to convince this committee, we have to convince other people.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to do this to due diligence.
We can highly recommend against utilization. It's a beautiful building. The town should endeavor to find an appropriate use, but it's not the senior
We just gave $100,000 of ARPA funds to do some restoration.
Yeah. So if reuse of the building is off the table, probably, no matter where we put it, it's going to be similar prices. So we could do square footage costs. Purchase of the land is completely separate. So David, do it for the year.
In terms of cost estimating, your question, for new construction on virgin land, single story, I think, we're not going to do, it doesn't make sense to do a detailed cost estimate, takeoffs and everything. For the square foot basis for building, using comparables for similar buildings. For the building itself, it's pretty straightforward. For those sites, I think it's looking at whether they have differences in site development costs. Are there significant, soils, wetlands, access, how long do building a road, access, driveway, et cetera, that's cost. And then there's a whole sort of soft cost analysis of one property's offered, like if that last guy is going to build the road and donate the land, that's a lot lower acquisition cost than someplace else where you have to buy the land and build the road. So,
and then we could talk about qualitatively that this is going to be significantly more expensive as opposed to saying it's going to be $2.2 million extra dollars because I don't know if we can get to that level of certainty.
Right. We'll just have to see how far we can get with it.
But I think it also has to be a little bit broadly approached because, as we heard from Ryan also this morning, everything's on the table. So even though there might be a little bit higher, more developed plan there, I think it's just important that it all be objectively evaluated in terms of what's in the best location interest of Southampton in terms of all the factors that go in.
Yeah.
I want to mention the Labrie land, which is the last land we went to, across from Parker and Grady. There is 2 housing complex. We don't have a lot of housing in town, but the Meadows and the Greenbrier Estates house a lot of our seniors, and they're right across the street.
Across the street from?
From the last land we looked at. The last
Okay.
property. That's just from my view, it's very close to
The
some of our
Meadows is
folks.
directly across the street, and then we saw Greenbrier when we drove.
We drove to
When
Harris
you
down.
turned around,
down-
right. So our seniors live in those places.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Okay.
That's interesting in terms of shifting the, center
The
of
focus, I
gravity.
mean, because I know I love, Clark Street, but, I mean, that is a possibility if we're getting donations, and there is housing right there for seniors.
So can I ask a construction cost question? Because I've seen, not in person, but developments where they actually do have multiple levels, just two levels for senior centers. And I know square footage of lateral space is much more expensive than building up. So is the cost of an elevator for seniors more expensive than making the square footage of the foundation and whatnot?
You need an elevator and 2 fire stairs.
Okay.
Which are relatively expensive.
Okay.
So it is
Or
a
an open architectural stair and 1 fire stair, but then it becomes part of your living room with a beautiful staircase, which is great and lovely, and it has pricier finishes, I mean, to build that staircase.
Okay.
I mean, it's not out of the question, but.
But it cost effective, which one's better, cost
It's
effective?
not as practical, it sounds
I
like.
answer. I think my instinct would be to say that building on one, if you take land cost out of the equation,
Fair.
that it's cheaper to just build on 1 story. But I can't say
Interesting.
for sure that I'm confident of that.
Floor structures, roof structures support less load. If you have a slab on grade, it's relatively inexpensive. If you have a floor structure that supports slide loads. I mean, it's a reasonable question. My sense is that to assume, you should not assume that 2 stories is any cheaper or more cost effective.
What about
Does it
light?
occur to you that there's, when you add in floor structure, elevator, and stairs?
Depends on the shape of the building. I mean, if you take a 2-story building and you just expand the footprint onto 1 floor and make everything deeper, you either need to break your roofs like this to bring light in from the interior, over another roof, and you could do that, or it's be darker in the middle. But if you stretch the building out, if you take the upper floor and you put it on one end of the lower floor, then you have the same amount of light. So it has to do with depth, really.
Yeah, and we wouldn't do, it's going to be this big and light in the middle of the building. I mean, what do you think?
I love the natural light that we have here. I always say that's the one thing that I do love about this space is that in the senior center, we have a lot of natural light.
And the green light.
And I do like the 1 floor. I think if it's possible, and I think it fits better in the town makeup too, is the 1 floor,
I
but.
think it's probably puts less stress on operating budget too, on staff. I mean, if you have 1 floor, you only, your whatever staff you have on hand can kind of
Can
get
look out,
everybody.
yeah.
As soon as you have real operations on 2 floors, it's kind of like you need 2 people all the time.
And we're not talking about something that big. If you have a multi-generational recreation center that's 34,000 square feet, sometimes that building makes sense to stack it, otherwise it sprawls. So maybe we assume 1 story. If there's any reason to do 2-story, it certainly isn't out of the question. And so, okay, we've talked about schedule. We'll write this up. We'll send it for for further refinement. So in the RFQ, the program talks about a dining/great room seating about 100 plus people. And was somebody saying, well, no, it's 120, or no, it's 100?
No, I think we said 100.
100, okay. So would the assumption be, so you don't serve daily meals. Part of it's because of the septic system. Your aspiration in your community center is to serve daily meals. And I think you said about 30 people. And the typical thing to do is you have the kitchen, you have the great room, divide, partitions, and on an average day, you cut it in half, you cut it in third. For the 30 people rather than 100 people, you open the partitions for 100 people. Is that what you're thinking of as the model?
Yeah, as long as it's not a big deal to open the partitions, but, and the sound makes a difference too. We may need a separate room. I mean, sometimes partitions don't always
No,
do
the
the
assumption
trick.
is they're sound partitions. They use them in
Yeah.
schools. You'll have 2 classrooms full of kids.
Yeah, I
One of
think-
these folding partitions.
I think most of them
Most of what we
had,
saw
had
divided in
partitions.
half. I think third
Half is
might be a
enough,
little
yeah.
bit.
Or was it the multi-use room or the cafeteria that was divided in half?
Multi-use room.
Yeah, not the cafe,
Right,
not the
right.
eating area. The eating area was kind of
Well, the
open.
typical model is to use the multi-use room because it's multi-use room, you want it next to the kitchen. It's also for the daily meals.
So we're talking
No, this is an eating room,
It doesn't have to.
David, an eating room versus a multi-use room.
Well, we're talking about, I think what you're referring to is we went to South Hadley Senior Center, which had
And
a
Hadley,
large
yeah.
dining room next to the kitchen, and then they also had a multi-use room, and it was the multi-use room that had the partition.
Right, not the dining room.
They're 3 times the size of Southampton.
But I think they did the same thing in Hadley. I think Hadley had a multi-use room and a cafeteria dining room as well off the
I think
kitchen.
in Irving was more what you were talking about.
Right, because
was
they're
having-
6,000 square
because
feet, so
were
they had to
smaller,
do
So they
that.
had the kitchen and the partitions, yeah.
Yeah. And another way to do it is you have the big multi-use room, great hall, you have big banquets. On one side of the kitchen, on the other side of the kitchen is a daily for about 30 people for meals. So both of those are reasonable models.
But if you say the building code space utilization for tables and chairs is 15 square feet per person. So now you're talking about a 1,500 square foot room for 100 people, just as a guideline. And if you say that you don't really anticipate a need for a 1,500 square foot room except, half a dozen times a year at most, then we might not feature that as kind of being, such an important room, because there's a lot of ways to expand seating for 100. I mean, if you have a big circulation atrium, so maybe the dining room can open up and you can encompass another space for larger seating events or something like that. I mean, it's a good way to
No, we
start.
talked about a cafe, and maybe the cafe could be the place where they're having the 30 people for dinner.
The daily
Or the daily.
dining could be in the cafe, and then some other
A
things,
smaller,
big
a
functions.
grand hall, great hall, whatever, yeah, for
The cafe is
larger.
also just a coffee pot.
How big is this room?
About,
They will let you know.
Well, let me ask
I
you a
mean, this
question.
is about a small classroom, so this is
it was about
700 square feet.
700 square feet.
Well, now we'll find out if my eyeballs are right.
So what it notes here is a great hall, which suggests not just a big room when you open the partitions, maybe with a low ceiling, but something a bit more ceremonial. Do you anticipate that it has other uses in town besides the senior center? Because, wow, what a fabulous space. You can even rent it out for weddings, or you can do theater performances. So, you said great hall. So that doesn't express aspirations that, is that?
I'd say possibly. The church rents out that space. So it might be something that would be rented
I
out.
think we were thinking about some of the places we visited, and they had in their hall, they had the welcome center where there would be desks and people, and then it would open up and there would be seating. There would be some comfortable seating. There might be library bookcases, there might be, artifacts, there might be something, but it's usually, could be a gathering place, it could be, for standing or for, who knows, wine tasting, I don't know. I mean,
we could also have display movies in there. So have some audiovisual equipment and.
But usually when you talk about a great hall, it's a room you can more or less close off, which isn't that just sort of, hanging around in a lounge space, which
Right.
it should definitely be.
I don't think that was my impression.
Right, so David, are you looking for a room sized for 100 people, or are you looking for the capacity to have a function for 100 people? Because
I'm asking, there are two ways to have a room. I mean, this is oversimplification for 100 people. You just sort of have a room, nothing particularly grand about it. You can divide it up sometimes, you can open it up. It's a utility space, an activity space. Not that it should be really
It's
nice.
multi-purpose, yeah.
As opposed to a great hall which has, you know,
Auditorium,
more
stage,
character
or-
to it, with the idea when it's opened up, people really want to come there. You get people,
Could we mull this over a little bit? Because, I mean, we have a lot of properties to go through that we want to just kind of talk about beforehand.
Okay.
And I'm not sure where the term Great Hall, I'm just trying to remember where Great Hall
That's why I was
came
just
from.
looking up the plans for the other
we'll
ones.
have a bunch of conversations about
Yeah, I
program
think-
in the future.
yeah. Why don't we can move on. I think
Okay.
we can move forward and we can continue the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's okay, because, I mean, we could, spend the next 2 hours doing it. And we
And
have,
so I think maybe programming is pretty clear until we take the next step forward.
right, okay, good. So we did add at the end of our last meeting, the idea of looking at the East Street, 16 East Street, B2, to the property. But we, as a committee, have never voted on whether or not to include it in the study. But we wanted to take advantage of your presence here to at least take a look at it. So I would just like to take a few minutes to get everybody's opinion from the committee, since we went and did due diligence for all the other properties we shared with you. I feel like we need to have that discussion amongst
Did we go
ourselves.
there this morning?
We did go there
Yes.
this morning, yes.
It's adjacent to the pickleball court.
Yeah, Libby knows where it is, it's just,
Is it
Wait,
very
so-
wet?
Do you want to,
Sink
somebody did
in.
the property card, you want to say a couple
Yeah,
words
no, I
about it?
yeah. So Darcy, Libby, and Audrey
You want
did
to
the
just talk about it a
study.
little bit, because
Yeah,
I just got
that's
the
what I'd like
email
to
yesterday.
do.
I haven't had time to look at all these emails.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we didn't get a chance to actually walk the property, walk beside the property. From what we found, the topography is obviously nice and level, right? Without the maps that were sent to us, of the surveys that were sent to us, we wouldn't have known about the actual wetlands, except for, obviously if you walk through there, it is wet. Because the actual Mass GIS did not flag it as
It's not
wet.
on GIS.
It's not on there.
Interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
a lot of delineated areas are not.
Yeah.
Right. So,
They delineated it for some reason.
So
yeah.
do you have that,
Yeah.
do you have a plan of the delineation?
I think, did you?
Yeah, that's,
send to you?
we sent
You
it to
yeah.
them.
And they forwarded it on. What else? So obviously it is, ideal location, but we do know from our discussions that trying to gain access through the park could be quite difficult, and regulations and whatnot. And trying to get to College, Route 10 would be very difficult because it's that one little strip that we walked, and that's being saved for a footpath right now.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yeah, so evidently there was
What's it
a grant.
zoned? Residential village?
Yes, I believe so, yeah. Residential village is what we found with zoning. So that was pretty basic. Our main concern would certainly be the wetlands.
And the other thing about getting into it is we would have to remove some pretty old trees.
Yeah, there's some
And I'm not sure that we'd get a lot of support to take down trees just to get in, even if we did get
Where
approval.
the path is?
Right.
Well, yeah,
Or you mean the oaks,
the oaks.
the row of oaks?
Yeah, the row of oaks. Because in order to make a turn to get into the property,
Right.
even if we were to get access, I think from either direction, we would sacrifice a lot of trees.
Go ahead. Could we tell how much land was available outside the wetlands? It looked pretty small, so that would be something that we'd want your input on.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
4.9 was the total, and if you, it's like half. It really,
And you end up with this triangular shape by the time you take all the wetlands out, right?
It doesn't look like I would rule it out.
Okay.
If you can- Is that that's the setback? Would that be?
the
Yeah, that's
dotted
a
line.
100-foot buffer, I think, isn't it?
I think so.
It's a 100-foot buffer, I think it is. So it would be delineated, then they have to put 100 feet outside of it.
That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's the
Oh, that's a 50.
50-foot buffer.
It's a 50-foot
It
buffer.
depends on what the Concom requirements are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference between.
So there's,
Yeah.
this is the parcel that we talked about on our Zoom meeting that is adjacent to the library. And you indicated that, like, we thought maybe we could just, drive in, use that driveway, but it's part of Conant Park, and I think you indicated there might be a restriction to park usage that is not related to the park.
Right, that would be the question I would ask from my experience of municipal land use and everything, or is that very often there are, that park lands are restricted to park use, and particularly if any federal grant money has ever been spent to improve them, that can be a lot of work to get around that. And then, but if they're the Article 97 of the Massachusetts general laws or whatever, it's not at all uncommon to rededicate park space. You just need to get it through the legislature. Again, this is my understanding, not my expertise, but as I understand it, Article 97 changes happen in virtually every session of the legislature, and when the local delegation asks the legislature for something, then it's generally looked on favorably, because every delegation eventually comes asking, and so they don't want to turn down their colleagues, so that when their town wants to do something, often you swap land. It generally, if it's a park, it needs to serve the same constituents, so it needs to be it's usually better, it wants to be in the same part of town, and it needs to be comparable. But if you can dedicate new land, then you can de-dedicate land. Something like a shared driveway is also maybe, it needs lawyers, it needs time.
No, we put that as a disadvantage.
We did.
Yes, right, so that's probably a disadvantage.
Where's that list or splash pad supposed to go in the park plan?
Between the pickleball courts and that playground.
So down by on the other side, on the library side. Yeah, so the only thing that my personal impression was, and it goes to my comment earlier when I was saying outdoor programming, I think that municipal use, gathering municipal uses is attractive generally. Probably could help being near the library, near the park, near pickleball, near the picnic pavilion, all of those adjacent uses are an advantage to a site like that, and could support increased subscription to the senior center. More people would get there, hear about it, see it, participate. And I think that's a reason to at least initially consider the site. And so having something flagging the wetlands to figure out if it's viable to fit a building on, a test fit, and because that's a lot easier to do than investigating access, which seems quite difficult, because coming from the library side, that's where the wetlands are flagged, right in that corner.
Right.
Like, so you'd be kind of building in the wetland. Well, there's wetlands at either end if you're coming across, and at the other end, it'd be a big deal to widen that. I mean, widen. I mean, there must be, I would assume there's a pipe, an open pipe under that little sidewalk, that asphalt sidewalk. Yeah. For the wetlands on either side. So you are in the wetlands with that path now. Could it go from 8 feet, 10 feet wide to, a 30 or 40 foot right away to get a driveway and replicate it somewhere else? Sure. Would it be something that you get permitted, you get support for in Southampton? I'm not sure, right?
Right. So the point would be to ask the difficult questions as early as possible, and if the door slams shut, great, rather than explore it and then find out.
So who's the conservation agent?
Well, we have a commission, probably, that would be more weigh in on it. Would
Yeah,
be
but
some-
there's no staff conservation agent?
We are in the process.
We just funded, they haven't hired, they're interviewing now for
I see, so
funding.
you're going to have a conservation agent.
We have a 2-year funding out of ARPA, and then hope and plan to be able to absorb that by year 3.
It's been done 100% citizen up until now.
Yeah.
Volunteer, yeah.
250 years.
Volunteer committee, yep.
Right, well, then, so I would stick with the committee and talk to.
And they're a worker bee group, let me tell you.
So I'm wondering if we should have a meeting and make sure we invite Concom as
Yeah.
well as Parks.
Yeah.
Because they both might share. I mean, I don't know if there's the kids' playground, if they want cars pulling in and out that way, and if the other were with the,
You know, one way that you might think about approaching it, that would, I think you'd have to make your own determination about OML, open meeting law and everything, but if the chair of this committee were to walk it with the chair of those other two committees, and just like, the chair of each of the three committees, like, can you meet me down at Conant Park? And then walk the little pathway back and forth and say, hey, you know, we'll just, you know, it's not very threatening when we're looking at multiple sites and we're just at the beginning, just wanted to have a conversation. Does this, you know, and then they could say, yeah, let's talk about it. Or they could say, yeah, this is, like, I don't think.
And what are the obstacles to using it that you see? Because that's the essential question.
I mean, and then you obviously have a meeting at some point, but I don't know, that's what I would like.
On those parcels too, like outside of the wetlands, I haven't walked that either, but I have sold some of the properties that abut it, and they're very squishy to walk on. It's not wetlands.
it's not a wetlands, yeah.
But it's squishy. And even like,
Back in those yards.
yeah, at all times of the year, not just in the spring or,
I mean, we had to bring in a lot of soil to raise up the pickleball courts because that whole area of the Conant Park is very wet.
So, and you don't know, it could be, you know, there could be peat or whatever, I mean, it could be organic and could be a cost factor to, you know,
Need
soils
improvements to
drainage or helical piers or whatever, I mean, you know, you can build on anything.
but is that something that's, you can get by, it's just a cost factor of
Perhaps.
getting, okay.
But it's not wetland, yeah, one would assume.
Yep.
Yeah. But-
So how does the committee feel about myself and Andrew's not local, so somebody else joining me and see if we can get either Marla or Mark together to walk that area, and if we get really negative pushback about the area, then we know right away.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I don't mind meeting if it's a time that allots, you know, I'm on vacation, but, so I don't know how quickly, but, yeah.
Okay, so are we comfortable with doing that? I'll do that in the next, try to get that off in the next couple of weeks. Sure. And then we can.
Who are the two people?
I think it's Marla Hank is she's still the chair, and Mark Reed is the chair of the parks.
Okay.
So, and I think they would be pretty direct as to whether or not they felt it was viable.
I wonder if we could overlay that map with the GIS showing the location of the library and adjacent parcels. Can you see the library entrance on that map? I don't think you can.
No.
One of them we took a
Okay, that
picture
might
of.
just help me.
Right here.
Okay,
Is it on there? The
Yep.
GIS, okay.
Not the
It's
GIS,
on
that's
this one.
just the Google map.
Okay.
yeah,
Maybe we could put on
yeah.
We might be able to do some kind of
delineation
overlay.
over the GIS, so you can look at all the parcels together.
Right.
Yeah, they're same in the report. But if we could do an overlay and line up the roads.
Yeah, because I pulled it up on here. This is the screenshot. I think one of them I gave you. You can see where you can cut in right there.
Yep.
But we could do that maybe.
Oh, when we were looking at that, I was like, that really goes out to Route 10? I can't believe that.
Yeah, I know.
And then I drove by it after,
So you
Audrey said,
can
yeah, you can see the
see, like,
pickleball
oops, sorry.
court from Route 10. I'm like, what's going on? Because I'm not very observant.
Hopefully you're looking forward, not
I
right.
know. I was like, well, you must be
But I'm
kind of really
assuming this
slow.
is
He's looking to see who's on the court.
here.
Is the main
And that's the
state
playground.
road, yeah.
But if we were at it, we walked up to the front of the property at
Yes.
the end of the Oaks.
Yep, yep.
We would
It has a
probably
big
scoot in
gate, like
there.
almost like
So it'd be a tight turnout to that
You know, I
too.
saw that.
Yeah, that's where it is.
It would be a pretty project to build a road across the wetland.
Yeah.
Probably.
And again, I think you would have to take down a number of oaks to get to the property, and, you know, I think,
I was just looking at the picture. You might have to take that one anyway.
In my opinion, I briefly touched on this, was that I think we need to at least have that be part of the study to rule out, unless we can definitely say that Concom or the Parks Commission right off the bat said no, because I think where you have two parcels that have developers that own it, if we, and this landowner came to us, if we just don't, we need to have some foundation to say why we're not doing this one, especially where these two are in the running. I just feel like from town perspective, it doesn't, people will say, well, why did you go in this direction when you got offered? So I think
Keep it on until we meet.
Keep it to be able to at least meet with them and say that, no, the park won't allow this, or no, Concom won't allow it. Then we can say, it's not, this is why. And if they say yes, then you can maybe down the road say why.
Construction cost or whatever.
Whatever, but I just feel like we need to have that.
You made a good point there. I mean, you got pickleball right there, you got the pavilion right there.
Location is great.
Really
Right.
great.
I mean, people can literally play pickleball, come in,
Right.
You get more people coming to the center.
Right, so I think it needs to stay.
I agree.
Yeah.
You might even be able to get in without taking one of them out. Not that it would necessarily sit on.
It already went blank, but I saw it.
Blank, yeah.
It fell asleep. But I did see it, thank you.
I'll get them.
So if we said the report we do is the repository for all this information, you get, whether it's talking to the parks people or whatever, you can feed it to us, and we can have a map showing here are all of these properties that were considered, and they are not appropriate because, and it may be our recommendations or maybe what you're finding out.
Are those photographs going to be part of the open house or no?
Are we talking about properties at
Are
we talking about properties at this one?
No, it's, well,
I thought it was
we're not talking, we're having discussions and we're doing.
I thought it was more programming.
Yeah.
That's the question. As we get ready for it, we'll set up an agenda, if it's 90 minutes or 120 minutes or whatever, set activities, and then what what you want to get out of it, and, in terms of where
You'd
we're
have to get permission from landowners too, I believe.
The beginning input on locations, I think, would be really, really useful up front. Unless anyone felt otherwise.
Yeah, and if you want, we've got...
I think just a vague question of, would you prefer to be closer to this end of, the parks over here, or would you prefer to be here? What areas?
Generic?
Yeah, I would say generic, because I think if you get too many people.
They're going to be lobbying for their friend who owns this parcel or that parcel and that. I don't
I was saying, if it becomes too politicized, keep it general, if you think we might get good and honest opinions representing the project constituency, maybe something to think about. We could get
fast. Yeah.
Certainly further out or further in.
Yeah.
And if people want to speak up, well, I live in senior housing right here, what about this piece of property, whatever, then that's useful.
I think it's public knowledge what we've been looking at.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's not a mystery to anybody if that watches meetings, but, I think at this point to show pictures of property, I mean, really, what is the program? What is maybe location and distance and...
Right.
But let's talk about what it is that's going to bring you to our enrichment center or senior, what was the one you said?
Center for Active Living.
Center for Active Living.
I like that. I do like
East
that.
Hampton calls it
An enrichment,
center, and Springfield at one time called it the Good Life Center.
to me.
I don't get enrichment.
Senior center in my mind.
Right.
What's that?
It's just, maybe you're trying to create a new, language.
Image marketing.
But anyway, I think it's, like when they offered some programs, I had no idea what the enrichment center was.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
What age group is that? Center for Active Living is...
Yeah, that's a little bit more.
I can understand that.
one better.
Could be for like 5-year-old kids.
That's what I think of.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, little kid center, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the property visits today, any initial?
Let's start with the first one.
Well,
So
I
it
didn't
sounds
go to any of them. You all did.
Yeah, but this is for your benefit too.
Hold on, go ahead, David.
They're 79 Clark, 89 Clark, and 16...
East
I'm sorry, 79 and 89 and 0 College are on the table. We've talked a bit about the police station, we can return to it, and 16 East Street, B2 is the one we were just talking about.
Yes.
And the other options, we've got a few other options, those are off the table.
Well,
Can you talk about
the
them?
town,
Because I don't know what
one. The town ones are actually, did we decide that it's, I might be confusing with public safety, but the current fire station site.
Yeah, we haven't,
and the
yeah.
existing senior center site, building off of there. So I think those are because we own land quite a bit in the back too. So were those for this committee? Or was it only the senior center site?
No, we said the fire station was
Okay.
another site, yeah.
Yeah.
And what about this building, expanding off of this building?
Yeah, that was the one, that would be the senior center one.
Senior
And then
center
the fire
one.
station, I think the general consensus is that the fire station would come down and that it would be on that location.
So I don't think we've seen anything on that.
Yeah, that's the thing, is we haven't really done the buildings except for this.
You drove by it on your way in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
in
that's-
terms of-
You didn't send paper on them.
We've gotten a series of
Right.
emails with information on maybe 7 sites. A couple of them are off the table, some of them are on the table.
I thought we were only supposed to send violence.
Why are they
Yeah,
off
we
the
only,
table?
we didn't pull any off the table that I'm aware of that we've
we
sent
had
you.
the East Street, the
I think that
older-
you got the share drive from Andrew, and maybe you looked at a couple sites that we had reviewed early on, but
That's what he's.
That's what,
but there,
Right,
that
well, let's talk
wasn't,
about what the sites are. So the first one is
He has the
Marvin Keystone. That was the first one we looked at today.
so 780,
It's Colebrook Realty.
he has the list.
79.
8, yeah. But can we get a comprehensive list of what you've looked at, what you want us to consider, and what you've crossed off? I mean, it's not that long a list.
But we don't want to waste your time.
We don't want to waste your time.
Then we looked at 4, wait, in terms of what we're going to be charged with at the moment.
4.
We have
4
3
properties.
plus maybe the 4th that we looked at this morning.
Yeah,
And then there's 3 town buildings.
Correct.
3 town buildings.
Correct.
Yes.
This is, I'm unclear on what these 3 town buildings are, because I'm not sure we've gotten.
well, we'll go over all of them.
Okay,
The
good,
first one
good.
is the Marvin Keystone property that we looked at, the first one this morning, where the cornfield was. They said everything's on the table, but my sense is that it's listed for 1.1 million.
Right.
102.
1.2 million, and including that L-shaped lot in the back. And even though they said they might be willing to consider doing, I think they are keeping the business and they're selling off everything they all can around it. So I'm not so sure that they'd be willing to take that L off and lower the price, but I'm not sure about that. Do you know, Darcy?
it says that they would rather sell the entire 12.6 acre site
The summary from the ones,
from their
from the feedback from the
letter.
questions that Chris sent out.
Yeah.
A bit of preference, I got
Yeah.
impression from talking to Mitch that
That would be their preference, to sell the entire L-shaped lot, 12 point something acres, and
12.6.
it's zoned industrial.
It's, yeah, and they want 1.1.
maybe willing to.
1.1.
That doesn't,
1.1, okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't include the building?
Doesn't include
It
the
does not
building.
include the building, that's a separate
It's
lot.
87,301 per acre.
And what we had received was a U-shaped lot, but he clarified that one bringing the is
The L.
not.
It's just the L, right.
I think we're clear on that.
Yeah.
So that's that one, right? It's already got a list price, I mean,
Yep. Yep, they're on the market. Yep.
And then the one next door to it, which is 89.
Gilliher.
Right.
I think you got the clarification on the actual map.
on Clark Street?
Yep, the frontage, yep.
That's Clark Street, Darcy?
Yes. Yep. That one.
And my sense is that
Oh, that might come in handy.
Wow.
yeah, so I think he hasn't clarified, he's, let us know what you want, and so he hasn't really said sell, donate, combination thereof, willing to do an easement for the bike trail, like, you heard him, I mean, there's no sell price. Right now, he owns this, and then he owns the entire strip of land that goes behind Route 10 with all the gas station, all the way down to the house that he referred to that was particularly problematic from the
That's on the highlighted sheet I gave you just recently here.
Yeah,
His land in the back.
So the land that he's willing to offer is how much?
He didn't say. So we've got the 2 parcels, and he said he just doesn't want to landlock
access
himself.
back.
Because his access on Route 10 here is horrible.
the answers from
It's a really
No,
tough
I should have.
access.
Yeah, thanks.
I shouldn't say horrible, it's a tough access.
But it's a pretty big property. And
It's a pretty big,
Yeah.
and could accommodate, even with, this is an easement here, so a road would have to skirt around that, but it could, a road could be put in there. It's definitely, and then you could, he said he would do an easement or over to the railroad tracks, or, you could maybe purchase something if it was going to fit both properties.
You could have, building there, and you could have parking there, and you can have some, outdoor recreation there, and still have room for,
Yeah.
a road going back.
Or conceivably, you could put,
What's the frontage?
Isn't
a
this his
road
property too, or is that?
No, that's-
Bruce Coombs?
that's Bruce
Okay, yeah,
Coombs.
so he wants access to this land.
right, so there could in fact be, like was being talked about on the Zero College property, there could be essentially a road developed, put public safety on Clark, put the senior center above it, and then the road would stub out and ultimately he could extend it.
Right, to
do
his
more
own,
development,
yeah.
Right.
To his own land in the back.
Which touches on another very significant issue, which is public safety, building and land.
Yeah.
Do we coordinate with them, which seems like it'd be productive?
So basically, as we talked about, the RFQ just got out, and it's due back.
10 entities that have
10 entities have already expressed interest.
asked for it, yeah.
It's like less than a week. So they're expected back in November, and then there's a 2-week block in case there are interviews, and the expected date for engaging the firm would be beginning of December. But I have to tell you that they are very ambitious with the idea, even though they don't have the funding that this committee has because of the donation, they're asking the RFQ to be back by April, early April, because they have already expressed an interest in going to town meeting. To me, it seems like there's a lot of work that has to be done. It's a pretty quick turnaround. I personally don't think it's entirely realistic. I think this committee, because it has the funding to purchase land if they choose to, or to move forward, I just don't know that that's realistic, but that's their plan. So they meet again on the 17th of October, and then we're doing a site visit to Granby Public Safety on the 19th. That's the update from them.
Yeah, it would be nice if we were could figure.
Very dangerous to have the same driveway. That's the only thing that worries me.
Yeah.
Exactly. I can't imagine, have the seniors pull over, here comes a fire truck. What?
Well, but the thing about the owner of Zero College was saying about, or somebody was saying about public safety, fire trucks not wanting to, or it's not good to have them blocking 10 when they come out. What they typically will ask for is an apron that's deep enough for their biggest truck, so that they can completely have a truck in front of the station outside of the wall, outside of the garage door, and then they can do whatever, wash and hose it, and so they just want a big apron, because in fact they actually do like to have their doors on the main drag.
True.
They don't want an extra 90-degree turn because it's an extra 20 seconds of response time. So I don't think that would necessarily be an issue at the 89 Clark site, because if public safety was in front, they might open directly on to their apparatus would open directly onto Clark, and then the driveway or road would be for their staff parking and other vehicles that would be behind.
Yeah.
And it would be and then it would be the parking for seniors and this and that. So it isn't necessarily
At
that
least in
kind of
theory, there
conflict.
doesn't have to be conflict. Obviously, you want to set up a conflict. It's probably big enough it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And then, just, he mentioned about the EPA issue. That's something that he's going to get us some copies of. But
Yeah.
And the perk test.
It looked pretty.
yeah, there was the perk test
the perk
was done
test.
in the far back, but there are 2 wells that are still there, test wells, and he said it's already been closed up.
Closed?
Not, and his property is fine, but on heritage surveys and some of the properties in the back is a problem, but in his, he would have bought it if it was a problem, is what he said.
That seemed reasonably managed.
Yeah. So that's that one, and then the East Street one was the one that's near the library. And then, you want to just tell me what, I didn't go because I picked up sandwiches, what was the update on the Zero College Highway?
Well, I don't know what your perception is. I mean, you guys spoke to them a bit, but they were discussing, they had the diagram, 4 acres sort of behind the commercial property, like 300 feet in plus 375 feet in or whatever. And we discussed, he thought, was that big enough for both? And I
What's
think
the acreage on that?
He said it had
For
56
which?
acres.
No,
No,
what acreage
that's
is he,
So he said, here's 4, would 4 acres be sufficient for both? And I think we all, in discussion with him, said that no, that we would want to kind of separate the 2 buildings so they weren't like next to each other. And they talked about sharing parking but I felt, and again, I'm not the expert, but that 4 acres, we were looking at 3 and 3, more close to 6.
It would be back by the cul-de-sac, it would not be on Route
No, it could be almost, it would be behind a commercial property.
Okay.
So the frontage is,
Suggesting
Adjacent to Fletcher Farm?
these are his, in this general area.
that was the 4 acres he referred to
Yeah,
right
so,
there.
yeah, so what he said, he hadn't realized that there were 2 separate needs. He thought it was only one town need.
Oh, there was been 2.
No,
Yeah, no, of course, but what he says is that his goal would be to hook up with the cul-de-sac with a road.
From 10
He
to
wants to
land.
reserve the 300-foot
Yeah,
of
for
land that's
commercial,
for
yeah.
commercial. He wants to build a road through and then connect it through to the cul-de-sac, which obviously the people who live on the cul-de-sac may have something to say about that.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, there's kind of 4 acres here, but he said he had no plans in his, and this is his property also, he had no plans for any of it, really, and so it's flat land.
Well, he kind of said, let's come to me with your plan,
Yeah, okay.
and we'll talk about
So
it.
they're still talking of it not being directly on Route 10. They're
Right.
asking whether the both complexes can fit in a 4-acre lot. We said probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still considering constructing a road in here. They did, they have been engaged with the housing authority for a bit, and the original plan was to develop and put in 50 to 60 houses back here.
I think it was 43.
With up to 10 affordable houses, because we have a bylaw in time that says that if you build a development, the 10th house has to be an affordable house. So all of our developments are 9 houses. Yeah, but then he scrapped that whole idea because...
I think because it's over the aquifer, and there was a lot of, and with the septics and some of the Massachusetts regulations.
Most of the septic problem.
Yeah, most of the
They couldn't make it profitable.
Yeah.
We can have a separate conversation on involving your inclusionary zoning bylaw. I'm happy to talk to you about that at any time.
Okay.
I think Ron lives in that neighborhood as well.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't?
No, he lives up the
I
road.
know there was one conflict, he said there was one that was near his.
No.
Yeah, I think they were open to adding, right?
Yeah, so we had some flexibility.
Okay, all right, that's, I just
You know,
wanted to...
and
report on what
I
you
would
wanted.
just try to be clear that 4 acres for both would not be sufficient.
No.
And whether they're on opposite sides of their road or not, then there's no parking lot share. So he's talking about, can we share a parking lot? And, you know, for economies of scale from a town perspective and caretaking and plowing and
Yeah. I mean, my sense, our experience is that the shared parking with other municipal uses, town offices and the senior center, you know, they're both daytime uses, but it's not optimal for day-night, you know, sort of sharing of parking. But
The way housing is done.
yeah, right, housing and office often can really overlap a lot. But those are more, you can maybe get more economy, but public safety, it's basically all the asphalt for fire is dedicated. You know, maybe they want a little bit of visitor, they have a little visitor parking for people who want to come, builders who want to come talk about fire safety and get a stand from the, you know, get oversight from the lieutenant or whatever. Police, likewise, a lot of it is dedicated. And then there's a little more visitor parking for police, but there's not a lot of capacity for shared parking with public facilities. So I don't think there's a big loss. I think co-siting is, you know, certainly for septic, for main access driveway, for, you know, if you're extending utilities to get to the site, electric, transformer, that kind of stuff. Potentially there's some real economies for the town, for site infrastructure. I don't know about literally shared parking, probably isn't. You can talk to the police and fire chief how they feel about it.
I mean, the other thing, I don't know what else they're gonna do on that property. We didn't really talk to them about that, but if he's putting a road through, it's not just for public safety, and it's not just for a senior center. I'm sure there's 50 acres back there. There's probably plans for other building back behind the municipal buildings.
Well,
So it's gonna be a share road.
It did seem that from a financial standpoint, that we were hearing more generosity from the last owner about potentially donating land, potentially building the road. Again, it's all, the deal's not.
That's a Route 10 property you're talking about?
So the public safety building committee has been in place for 20 years. And there have been at least 3 attempts to build a public safety complex. And the first one didn't fly, and it was before my time here. The second one didn't fly because their proposed site was behind the current fire station, and there's a lot of ledge. It was $1 million excavation. And their plan included a lot of bells and whistles, and it wasn't supported financially by the town. And then the last attempt, there were a lot of political things that came up that turned a lot of people against the public support for it. And so it's, we're trying really hard to be methodical between both committees to garner public support, to process things in open and ethical ways, and hopefully we'll get major capital campaigns and then and public funding for borrow for both of these projects, because we need them both very badly.
Because public safety often, we've heard, overreaches because they protect people's lives and they know what they want.
We understand
The
that.
fire department is in and was built as a schoolhouse back in 1860, and the current police station is 1900 or thereabouts. So the past public safety complex building, the historical commission was very opposed to knocking down the fire station. They wanted to at least keep the facade, so then it restricted where it was, and so that was all part of it not going the last time. Now they've voted as a committee to allow the fire station to be demolished, but not the police station.
Because what we can do...
Is that about accurate?
Yeah. Is lay out a 10, 12, 13, 14,000 square foot senior center and parking and access, and you blow up and pop it down so it's this big, and you move it around, maybe with the landowner, if, you know, and with people who are doing public safety. We do design charrette. No, you move your building here, no, you move it here. We do the same thing. Here's a generic public safety building to negotiate this if it's advantageous for this project.
So just one other thing that this committee might not even know is that not only did we buy about an acre of land next to the old town hall current police station for egress to Route 10 and possibly septic to maintain that building doing something, we also bought 10 acres behind this current building for the same purpose.
More behind the fire station, right?
Behind the fire station. It's additional 10 acres, right? And it was $30,000, I know that, and it was to create more space for septic in the event to enlarge this building or to do a public safety complex or something.
It's all ledge. It's all ledge, isn't it?
Well, not the land that was bought in addition to this. So an additional 10 acres were
Does it go up to High Street?
It goes up to High Street.
Oh, it does, goes all the way up to High
I
Street.
think it's on High
The
Street.
Title V sand, we kept hearing about Title V sand.
It's not Title V sand there. They had a lot of trouble getting
That's
it.
on that side of it.
Was it Bill Bray's plan?
We
Yeah,
bought
it was Bill Bray.
Okay. Hey, folks, let's just say one.
So the bottom line, if you just bought land adjacent to both of these buildings that currently house the police and fire, specifically to be able to try to accommodate, more on the site.
So that was like 2010, right? That we bought that. Public safety, the last.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah, right around there.
So should we, so 79 Clark, 89 Clark, 0 College,
Yeah.
see, we're on the table, B2
Is-
do some due
we're gonna do some
diligence.
due diligence.
We recommend highly that the police station be taken off the table, although we can pursue that further.
Yeah, I think
Other
we
things we're talking about.
Well, the senior center was on the list that I sent to you.
And maybe.
As well was a fire station, but I didn't have any data or analysis of that.
I was looking at all of this, and maybe that might.
Yeah, we
slip
really
my
haven't
mind.
done any research on the firehouse.
So the fire department, it would be taken down. So it would be building on the site that the town owns where the fire station is or up beyond that. And then I believe the whole feasibility study from the public safety complex that was done in 2010 is on our website, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So can we get plans of pretty much exact outlines of the property? So it's,
Yeah, is that in the assessor's office?
I don't think they conceivably.
We didn't get the fire station and that particular lot extension from 210. Is it 208? Is the fire station 208 or?
So it's considered
Four, that's what it is. I think he's right.
On this particular site, one would be building up
Yeah,
the
it's
senior
not
center,
here.
and one would be
But I can-
where the current fire
get it.
station and thereabouts.
So got it. So yeah, because the study becomes sort of real for us.
Yeah.
When,
So you're missing the fire station and the land behind it.
Yeah, and the outline of the land. Yeah.
Okay. We've
Well,
kind of
or
just
even
talked.
the police extra land too.
He's got, well,
We've
yeah.
got the police.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Well, he has the building plans for it.
Do you have,
Doesn't have the
do you
land.
have building plans of this building, the electronic, PDFs?
Town
We
hall.
have to
Yeah,
have
so
it.
we can get a PDF
We
of
just,
that.
we
Yeah.
just modified it. Do you have that?
Well,
The drawings from the renovations?
Yep.
So if we could send that out and then we'll
So that's
the
it,
property up
3
there.
town properties and 4,
Land. Yeah, yeah.
That includes the police station.
Yeah.
Those are police, fire, and senior center.
Yeah.
and then the 4 private.
And conceivably, it would be an addition off the existing buildings, conceivably
Yeah.
it'd be remote, it just depends on, this is
Yeah.
why you hire architects and planners.
Yes.
Okay, no, that's great.
Did they have in the feasibility study for this, you said that's online?
That should be on our website.
well,
The feasibility study that was done for the site here for the senior center.
For the fire station? Or
Fire station, not the
The
senior
safety complex?
I believe that one's online.
Okay.
It is.
Because that would give you the layout of the existing building.
Right.
And probably the property, although if we bought more
I
property
think I have
behind
all
it,
the
then-
documents from that somewhere, 210, let's see.
Yeah, I don't know why we never pulled anything for the fire, I guess.
We only did it for vacant properties.
Right. We didn't do
Right,
the
right.
existing buildings at all.
Yeah, we did.
We thought we just walked through.
Yeah.
No, just for you, it's the property over there, and it's perfectly
yeah, but
clear to you what that property is.
It's not even clear to me how much.
Right,
We should go, we can go take a look when we step out.
That's the question.
I have no idea how much. Right.
Well, we have some flexibility on the 2 o'clock, but we did want to walk
Yeah.
some buildings and stuff. So
Yeah, so we'd like to do that. So, yeah, so is there any other, any comments about the property visits for now, from today?
Any more questions, Libby?
We can fill you.
We can help with.
I mean, my impression was they're all generous enough, big enough, that we can do initial test fits in terms of any kind of architectural question using kind of universal designs for senior centers. Like, we don't need to, they're not constraining, so you have to do a particular shape on any of them.
They're nice and wide, they're nice and deep, right?
Right, so we can sort of put together,
Oblong.
David was talking earlier about maybe some choice about building square footage and size of parking lot, so we can sort of do a small and a medium size, or, a couple different layouts, and then we could place them on each of the sites, and they can spin or whatever, but it just initially as a first, for the next time we meet, something like that, I think.
And do you have a calculation you use to say if it's this many square foot, we should have this many parking spots?
Usually that's in your zoning code.
I don't know that it is in our zoning.
Usually it's around 3 per 1,000 square feet or 1 per 300 square feet. And we've had clients who say, no, we don't need that. We're not going to have that many cars. And we have clients who say, that's not nearly enough. We're going to, so.
I've heard that more.
Yeah.
I've heard that, more
Yeah.
parking, more storage.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know how many parking spaces you would want, but it wouldn't be 30. That would not be enough.
Right, we were, I think, looking at, bounced around 80, 60 to 80.
And that may be more than you need, although, also in a
A lot of handicap parking, because since my mother's,
Yeah, I mean, handicap spots, and
very
then,
often it's taken when we go places.
Right, well,
I think what we want-
handicap is really important.
Yeah.
And you want drop.
we want safety paths from one end of the parking lot to the
Yeah.
building.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, that's something that's, I think, we can have a big open parking lot, but if people are like backing up and, we want to have safe passage to the cars to
If
the,
you have one of these larger sites, we can show more than enough. If it's closer into town, when it's more limited, you maybe squeeze back, so we'll have to take a look.
Now, these test fits, would that include the B2 parcel next to the park?
You tell us if you say this looks good.
Yeah, I think we should.
I think we should, I agree, especially because of the wetlands and whatnot that we know about.
Because we think that
may
was
not fit.
constrained, right?
Look, now that we have the wetlands, we can look at what would fit on that, and it's not a big, it's not a lot of work.
Yeah.
In terms of sizing the parking, the sort of environmental, sustainable point of view and where it sits in our communities right now, there are a lot of communities that choose not to pave for the maximum utilization. And we work with the town of Lincoln, which is, is very low, very wet, and now has more than a third of the land in conservation. That's what they use their CPA money for, the 80% that's viable. They just acquire land every year.
Open space
and put it in. Anyway, their campus, if you will, is called Ballfield Road, where not all the town offices and everything, but they've got these ball fields, they've got a bunch of offices, they've got 2 schools and everything. And there's a certain amount of paved parking, but the parents park on the verge. I mean, the parents just, like for drop off, they just all line up, and 2 wheels are on the grass and on the edge of the driveway, and none of it's paved at all, and that's just where they've always parked. And so you don't have to pave everything with a parking lot. And it's the same thing, like your everyday, day in and day out, should all be paved and everything, but if you're talking about that function that happens a couple of times a year, people can park up and down the driveway. It's always your call, but you don't necessarily want a huge parking lot in the middle of it.
It's a political statement, it's a social statement.
It's a stormwater.
And you start small.
Right, stormwater
You
management.
start with the
big time.
minimum, and if you need more, then you can
infiltrate.
20 spaces.
So Eddie, will you be able to give plans for the fire station and that property? Do you have that and town hall, or just?
Let me ask you this. Why would you want plans for a building that if we went
Well, not the plan, I don't mean plans for the building, I mean the property.
Rainey and I were just talking about.
Okay.
Here's the land.
One conversation, please.
Here's our building right here.
Yep.
Here's the gazebo, right here is the fire station right here.
Yeah.
The land is the land all in back here. And this was the land that was actually purchased that is less ledge in order to do septic. So I can send this to you. I'm just reluctant to,
I'm sorry, go ahead, what you're saying.
I just want to make sure it's current. That's
Yeah,
all.
and this is all unutilized,
All
unclaimed
time,
land.
yeah, yep,
That's a lot of land.
6.812 land, yep.
But it's
Yeah.
It's a big hill, and
Well, after we're done here, we'll walk out there, and then you
Yeah,
get a
so
sense of it,
This is
so.
6.812 acres right here, and then this says to be converted, so I think this is the land, maybe I was mistaken, maybe it's just an acre, but that makes sense, $30,000. Anyway, here is the
I
land.
don't think we bought it all the way up to High Street.
it's not all the way up to High
No,
Street.
it's
That-
not.
The town doesn't know.
So
I thought it was
is this
just a
what
chunk
you're
right
showing?
behind.
Just this right here?
Where?
This right here, the blue dot is us.
Yeah.
So, oops, sorry. So this is the land.
Yeah, so we will take.
Okay, yeah, so there it is right here. I
And I think David picked up on this.
Is that
I
the
must
same
have missed
shape
one
that
of the
you have?
emails that talked about this, so this
There's-
is great to know.
Rainey, there's the fire department. We actually own this piece too. We own this,
Yeah, but this
and
is very wet. There's a
Yeah.
house there and some car
Yeah.
went sailing.
So-
into it. Now it's all wetlands. It was long before you probably knew where.
But this is the part they're talking about.
Coming down the hill through the house, sailing right into the house.
Into the
Nobody
middle of
got
the
killed.
house. Do you remember what was it? Right
The
next
car
to
went
the
sailing
fire
into the house.
department.
It's very wet.
The car actually went through the house.
We need to measure. I remember that.
Yes,
So wet.
that's what I'm trying to do. So
Before they had those rules.
I need the hammer. The next meeting, let's take a look at the next meeting. I mean, whether we can meet or whether you all can meet, or we meet via Zoom or whatever, but like I said, we've been kind of centrally Thursdays every 2 weeks around the noon time. Because we have people that work, and so they sacrifice their lunch hour and a half.
So how about the 20th? Or
Does that
27th?
meet that criteria?
Yeah, it's 2 weeks from today.
20th is 2 weeks.
20th or 27th?
20th is 2 weeks. So So will we, I guess it depends on whether you'll have something to share by that time?
Figure on that, this is great to get dates.
Yep.
And why don't we do it on Zoom and we can do screen share? Because I think
Yep.
that may even be better. It's
Yep.
great being in the same room, but and have programming stuff to show you. And we should be able just to drop a generic senior center parking off. Why don't we try and do that? You know, not just for scaling purposes. Oh, that's big compared to, oh, that's tiny compared to the property, like who would know?
Is that at noon?
October 20th at noon via Zoom then. Is everybody okay?
I'll be on vacation, but I don't want to hold anything up, so I'll just I'll watch it after.
From Iceland?
Yeah, I'll just watch the video.
Is that where you're going?
Yeah.
So anyway, is that, because we need to have a flyer before then for us to send out to the seniors to announce in the November newsletter.
Yeah, 20th is good.
Yeah, I don't want to push it
Yeah,
out
I
too
mean, we
much.
do it every 2 weeks and,
We
yeah.
can plan for the 10th.
12.
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
We just have to have a document, something, a blurb to include in the newsletter.
Noon?
I'm sorry.
We have to have a blurb to include in the newsletter, which has to be mailed out to the printer on the 15th of this month.
15th, okay.
So something to Joan by the 13th at the very latest, which is not that far away. It's a week from today, which is probably when Joan's going to send out the newsletter, right?
On the meeting and.
Yeah, well, you were going to give us a sample or something even before that we can, talk about this, community engagement meeting with the seniors in town.
Community engagement. I like that.
And it's nice to have flashy graphics so people see it. I mean, it moves with too much stuff in one sentence why you should come. So we'll.
Good, that would be great, yeah. At this point, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn, and then we'll do a roll call vote. If Andrew's still listening.
To adjourn.
Second?
First, second, all in favor, roll call. Audrey?
Aye.
Darcy?
Aye.
Libby? Aye. Rini? Aye. Andrew?
Aye.
Janet? Aye. Thank you, everybody. So it is 1:54. We're adjourned. Great.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.